I'm a Buddhist monk.
Yes.
And I know very little about neuroscience. I want to know, how does the threat of climate change would affect the human mind?
In my opinion, threat is very subjective for each individual
Threat is a
person.
very subjective thing for each individual. In the empirical sciences, quantifiable fear changes from individuals to groups of people.
Communities or groups of people who are directly under threat by climate change are likely to process these varying amounts of threat differently to those who are not at risk of it.
I think it's not just about risk, because I see many people on higher standards of living are more aware about this than those who are more at risk.
When we perceive the news about the extreme disasters happening around the world, that makes many people uncomfortable. Many who are aware that the world we live in isn't the same anymore.
In Buddhism, we have this concept of bias or prejudice.
When the mind is biased, we can't accurately justify things anymore.
It's interesting that you talk about bias, because in science selective bias is very real. We talk about confirmation bias. And so that's why we use such strict blinding methodologies.
And this may be why some people lack of willingness to take action in the climate change situation.
That's right, yes. Because they lack empathy, which is cultivated only when the mind is peaceful. Empathy usually leads to the responsibility of every single person.
People with empathy will feel that every action matters, and these actions can lead to positive consequences, not just for themselves, but for the people around them and their surroundings.
That's true. And this is really interesting, because fear is also like pain and like empathy. So you don't have to be directly under a threat to perceive fear.
Studies have shown that seeing other people in pain activates the areas of the brains responsible for the pain processing.
And that is how then empathy is generated. So seeing other people in pain can cause you to feel pain.
There are two words, metta, meaning kindness.
Karuna meaning compassion. Metta is the feeling that you want all beings around you to be happy.
Karuna is the feeling that you want all beings to be freed from suffering.
But these two feelings will emerge when we feel ourselves first.
It's like when we aren't happy, sometimes we don't want the other people around us to be happy as well.
And there's also another explanation. People often live in denial when there's these plethora of conspiracies that climate science has aroused.
Our brains are very resource driven. It takes a lot of energy to learn and accept complex science and develop informed opinions.
Generally, our brains try to simplify concept and information, and they try to see things as black and white. So if there is a simpler explanation for something, such as a politician rhetoric on climate change as an oath, they would be more likely to apprehend and comprehend that concept easily.
You know, I'd say that the brain is really quite lazy, and unless there's evidence of a very high level of risk or threat, then the brain is not really willing to do the extra work to take on the more energy-consuming pathways of learning and accepting complex information.
In Buddhism, we consider a human being made up of two components, the body
And the mind. The mind controls the body like the software that controls the hardware of the computer.
The software is somehow defined by what we call viruses: craving, anger, and ignorance.
Not only the viruses that control the mind, habits also control the mind. Some repetitive actions will turn into habits that will create an autopilot routine in our life. If we have good habits, that's fine. But if we have bad habits, especially the apathy towards the climate crisis, it isn't very easy to fix.
Interesting that you mention anger. In psychiatry, anger is a human emotion. Just like sadness and happiness, it is a natural human emotion to experience. While it is sometimes socially unacceptable, there may be nothing wrong in being angry, unless the anger translates to actionable aggression.
Or hostility. It's okay to have it in cognition unless hostility or aggression is expressed.
In Buddhism, the mind has 4 components: perception, memory, thinking, and understanding. These components, when they are unclean and unclear, will not work properly.
Which specific parts of mind increase climate anxiety?
I would say climate empathy or climate fear. I like that better than climate anxiety. Fear is processed in the amygdala.
That's really where a lot of the emotional centres of the brain connect with and relay information onto other areas.
Our frontal lobe, the most pronounced brain structure in humans as compared to brains of other species, helps us rationalise the irrational fears and helps deal with them.
I think the idea of climate action needs to be popularised, romanticised for the masses as well.
While everyone needs to engage in complex learning, there should also be empathy that can evoke time and time again for those who suffer directly and more aggressively.
Some people are seeking the truth while some don't care about anything. If the mind is full of ignorance, people won't try to find what is happening to the planet at the moment. When we know the truth, we will also look for what is needed to be done. Once we begin doing it, we also need a mind that is disciplined enough to fight the old habits that die very hard.
Most importantly, politicians need to listen to scientists and create policies
That regulate industry and minimise damage in the long term.
For me, fear is a lack of understanding. When we understand the truth and accept the truth, we don't have a fear. I used to be afraid of dogs and ghosts
when I was a child. But once I grew up, I began to understand that ghosts aren't going to kill me. And dogs, not all of them are going to bite me. And I grew out of my fear.
Yes, and that was your ventromedial prefrontal